way people find craft beer has changed a lot the past 5 years. That's why we created Brewery DB, to help craft enthusiasts filter their search as they plan their next adventure. And to help breweries connect with these adventurers, we created Market My Brewery. Market My Brewery gives you full control over how people discover and see your products. You can market directly to the craft enthusiasts who are seeking great experiences without crowdsourced information or consumer ratings and reviews. We make it easy to update brand information, provide the key details people are searching for, and tell your brand story the way you want to tell it. Join Market My Brewery today for free and take control of your online presence.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our portion of Panel Fest. Appreciate the time and energy that was put into putting on this event and all the different panels. Hopefully, everybody's enjoying all the different subject matter that we're going to be talking about or have been talking about already. My name is Adam Howe. I am with GoTab Solution Engineer over at GoTab, point of sale platform, and I am joined here by a extremely vast wealth of information. We are going to be talking about how to utilize your brewery space to drive extra revenue, in addition to maybe your standard food and beverage program that you might have at your space, or non-existent food and beverage program that you might have in your space as well. So joining me here on the panel, we'll get the pleasantries out of the way. We have representatives from Stone Brewing, Gregg, Frazer, Allison, Lawley, and Sydney Simmons. And then Casey Berry representing Tripleseat, platform for managing all of your events. Allison and Gregg, can you spend a couple seconds just outlining what you guys do, your background, and how you guys utilize your spaces for events in a very broad sense? And we'll get into more details throughout the panel, talking about execution and talking about finances and things of that nature.
Of course. Yeah. Happy to be here. Thanks, everybody. My name is Allison Lawley. I am the Director of Hospitality Operations here at Stone Brewing.
I'm Gregg, Frazer. I'm the Senior Vice President of Hospitality at Stone Brewing.
Excellent. And then Sydney, representing Stone as well. What role are you playing? You're muted, though, Sydney. Oh, no.
Uh-oh.
You might check your mic settings. I'll just jump back to you. Casey, hi, how are you doing?
Hey.
Tell me a little bit about yourself and what you bring to the table here, and I'm excited to talk to you about all this event planning as well.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Casey. I work for Tripleseat, which is a event software, as we've discussed a bit. But before at Tripleseat, I onboard our new customers. So just basically, teaching them how to use the platform. And then prior to Tripleseat, I used to work at a large brewery in North Carolina. So I've been in that world as well.
Excellent. Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that as well, because in addition to working at GoTab, I bring over a decade's worth of experience operating different breweries and brew pubs, excluding most of them all had some kind of event space situation, whether it be private event space, festivals, etc., etc. Sydney, we're gonna try you once more and see if we got how we sound in here. Oh no.
Do you want to come upstairs, Sydney? Where she's sitting downstairs.
Oh, perfect.
In the meantime, we'll give a little overview. Sydney is our senior event manager at our Liberty Station location. So in total, we have about 8 locations with Stone Brewing, doing about $30 million a year in sales. Our 8 locations, we have 4 tap rooms, 2 company stores, which sells merch and beer, and then 2 large format bistros, one Liberty Station, one Escondido. Stone's been around for about 28 years. Of that $30 million, we do about $5 million in event sales each year, so about 16%. And just to give kind of a scope of that, we did in 2023, between just our two bistros, we did about 1,400 private events last year. So we've been using GoTap for about 5 years and Tripleseat for about 7 years now. So.
Excellent. Yeah. I love the fact that you have so many different varieties of spaces to use for different types of events, whether it be private or, or otherwise. So let's dive into kind of the use case for a lot of these different events. Allison, can we talk a little bit about how you utilize your spaces for non-private events, whether they be, beer tappings or other internal events that you're utilizing in that way, rather than utilizing the space strictly for a food and beverage private event type of space?
Yeah, well, we're lucky enough to have very large restaurants that we run. So our Liberty Station location is about 55,000 square feet, both inside and out. In total, we have about 7 private event spaces throughout the space. But having such a large restaurant, we're able to take these large group walk-ins, which we like to call non-events. So people that aren't necessarily looking to book a private event, we are able to, these groups of, 50 people that walk in without calling us, and we're able to take them. We're able to do, have these different spaces that aren't private events, but able to do cornhole leagues and movie nights and various different things there. At our Escondido location, we utilize our parking lot area as well as our entire restaurant to throw our anniversary celebrations every year. Our tap rooms are really great at doing programming, not only with private events, but with, having musicians there all the time, having, trivia, gaming leagues, anything we can do to kind of drive people in and get them in and have them coming in on a weekly basis. So we love to throw ticketed events. We love to invite non-events to come in. And then, our big bread and butter, though, which is Sydney can speak to a lot of, is our private events.
Yeah, putting on private events was always something that was huge in my world as well. All the different breweries that I worked at, being able to utilize your space in such a way where you're bringing in new customers that maybe weren't coming in normally. Obviously, when you put on a festival or you put on your anniversary parties, they're coming to you for that event, right? But when you're putting on private events or banquets or whatever you want to call them, you're generating basically new leads and new opportunities for new people that may not have come in per normal. So yes, Sydney, can you speak a little bit more toward kind of the spaces that you manage and how you put on, like how you make your decisions on putting together these more private events, how you're going about bringing people in and then executing those type of events?
Yeah. So as Allison had mentioned, you can see there in the middle picture, it shows 8 different event spaces that we utilize. So all of those are kind of, for the most part, separate spaces. There are 2 smaller spaces within our main garden that we utilize. So what's great about our property is everything is kind of separate. So there's space that the restaurant wouldn't be utilizing had we not have events, unless there's our walk-in non-events. And so with utilizing these, or bringing people in, I should say, the brand, of course, brings a lot of background for that, as well as I'm a part of different associations to help get our name out there. We have a lot of people who just inquire through our website, as well as guests that just come through our doors. They see the different spaces. They say, we've been to the property before. We saw there's lots of different spaces. We have posters up to show that we can do the different events. We have lots of marketing materials at our host stand, advertising kind of our events, as well as utilizing different platforms with marketing, such as like Wedding Wire, The Knot, Venue Report, and such.
I mean, I think you hit on a lot of really good points. The fact that you're going out and you're putting yourself out there to bring these events in. You're not relying solely on the name brand recognition, being part of associations, utilizing different marketing platforms and what have you. I mean, I can speak directly to my own experience having a dedicated banquet coordinator or private event coordinator at my venues, the venues that had that. Well, obviously, we did a lot better. You had somebody going out, actually trying to generate those types of events and coordinating that. Casey, can you speak a little bit more about to that effect with the locations that you work with, that Tripleseat works with, and what they do to, again, bring as much business into these spaces that may not be utilized in general as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing, just, bouncing off of what Sydney was chatting about, I think that that's so important to have a designated event person who's, like kind of hitting the pavement, right? As mentioned, like you at the brewery, business is obviously just getting more and more prevalent. And so, having someone who's going and finding the business and then keeping up and having repeat customers is so important. But as far as like talking to like getting creative, with your spaces and driving, revenue and customers, coming into your doors, I think a lot of it is just like getting creative with the space that you have, right? So, one big concept that I think is really common that I utilized in previous lives, and then also I see other customers that I work with, is one, if you don't have designated event space, how do you elevate maybe a couple of tables that you have in your space to allow for private events to book those spaces? Sometimes it's not needing a full event space. It's just a corporate event wants to come have a happy hour with you, and you've got a couple of designated tables that you've set aside and maybe elevated with like some linens or something, right? So it's just like getting creative with the space you have, or getting dividers. I know that sounds super, super simple, but, pulling dividers into your space that you're just creating like a small amount of privacy for these groups. That's all they really need sometimes, is just sectioning off a space that you already have, and utilizing that. And I think that another big thing is just saying yes, having folks come into your brewery, check out the space, see, as far as like private events goes, have a meeting with them, have them come check out the space and work something out with them, say yes to anyone who comes into your door and has an idea and wants to, work with you to make that event space work. So, yeah.
I think just the fact that you're touching on this, like, be creative with your space, like it brings back personal memories of mine. So my wife and I got married and we had our reception at a small brewery in Oakland, California. Shout out Adam over at now Old Can Brewery, used to be Linden Street Brewery. And his space was going through a lot of renovations, or about to go through a lot of renovations, when we approached him with a whole lot of ideas, as far as like, hey, we want to use the space. We would love to have a reception here. And he had no coordination, like, purpose. He's like, sure, do whatever you want. We literally painted a whole wall with chalkboard paint, and we drew stuff on the wall, and we set up tables and yada, yada. But the fact is that we came from a background of coordinating these types of events, working in the brew space and what have you. So we didn't have to rely on a dedicated person to kind of do that. So having that person, that one point of contact that can then be creative, that can then coordinate with the client, with the group that's going to be coming in, about what are they looking for, how can we accommodate, and then being creative with your spaces as well. Sydney, this goes in obviously Allison and Gregg as well, goes to like the point of utilizing your different spaces in different ways. Can you talk about any creative outlets that you've used your spaces that may not have been, whether it be a wedding in front of the production area, or utilizing the spaces that maybe aren't dedicated to your food and beverage program in creative ways?
Yeah, so there are lots of times, even though we have a lot of space here at Liberty Station, that we're totally booked and we have to find different ways to still fit more groups in since we have the space. So I've started, sectioning off, like Casey said, we use stanchions, we use hedge walls to try to section off different parts of the garden for people to utilize. Of course, doing buyouts of the entire restaurant. I have groups that will, do different sections for different dinners for different departments of their company, but then all coming together at the end in the entire bistro. We also are very fortunate that behind our location, we have what's called the North Promenades. That picture was up there. When we have groups that are larger that we can't fit on our property itself, we extend out to that area, so fencing off that grass area, and that's kind of where we bring in like our festivals, big ticketed events, so yeah, right in that lawn, and we can hold up to 4,000 people out there, so it's a nice little perk. We also have gotten creative with, since we are a brewery and we don't have a hard liquor license, utilizing that space that is technically not our space as a speakeasy. So if you can see at the end down there, there's a giant tree. That's our actual space. We built stairs that go over the hedges out into this lawn to create speakeasies. And then we bring in a outside cocktail vendor. So then people can go have their cocktails, but then come back and enjoy our beer on our side and still be all above board on that. So, getting creative with that. We've also had groups that come in and they're like, we want to make sushi at your property. We're a
Nice.
brewery. We're not really a sushi restaurant, but sure, let's do it. So, our chefs came out and they taught the group how to make sushi. So again, like Casey said, always say, yes, what can we do? We've never done it before, but sure, let's try it, see what works for that.
I would just add on to that as well. Obviously we have the luxury here and at our SKO Bistro to have the space, but when we're talking about our 4 tap rooms, which are much, much, much tinier versions of these large format bistros, they don't have the luxury of it, right? So they have a garden, very small garden, but our taproom managers are really, really great at saying, keeping the place open, but hey, I've got this 30 top. They're going to take a section of that garden that they have and section it off with stanchions, do what they need to do, and have, that person is able to take that spot in a private, semi-private kind of setting, for a couple of hours, but we're still open to the regular public as well. So they're really great about just trying to utilize every space, maximize, again, not saying no is our biggest, it's been a big focus, especially once Gregg and I started 6 years ago. Our team liked to say no before, and now they do not say no. So we will take it as any way we can get it.
Yeah, I mean, it really goes to wanting to say yes. Obviously, you want to be able to say yes because you want to drive as much revenue as possible. You also want to make as many people happy as possible because they're going to remember this experience and then hopefully come back in a different, whether it's the same capacity or in a different capacity, for generating added revenue in the future rather than just in the moment. And that goes, you guys mentioned the ability to do buyouts and like large scales where you basically lose the space altogether. Can you, all of you guys, Gregg, Allison, Cindy, can you guys talk about the kind of the execution of that kind of an environment where you actually are, buying out the space and then ultimately the having to balance that out with, maybe having people come in and not being able to accommodate them. And then also staffing those types of events and the efficiencies that you've kind of come up with over the years.
Yeah, so buyouts really start with the price point on it. So buying out our whole restaurant, it has to be practical for us. It has to be making up that sales that we're going to be losing. And then I also tack on a little bit for those people that we may be pissing off and they may not want to return. So I add on a little extra to offset that. But of course, we always guest recovery. So when we do have those buyouts, we do have someone that's stationed at our front door for any people who didn't know that we were closed. We always try to post on our social media platforms that we're going to be closed that day. We post on our website. Of course, changing on Google is a little more challenging. So we usually don't go that route. And so some people still do come, or they didn't even look online and they're just showing up. So having someone at our front doors with gift cards. So for those upset guests or just any guest, here's a gift card to return. We'll be back open again tomorrow. We do try to do our best depending upon the buyout and the level of setup that they require. Of course, every client has been different, but we try to push the envelope to keep our doors open until we absolutely have to close for the event. Most of the time, our events are 3 to 4 hours for a buyout. So it's not necessary to be closed the entire day. So we can still be open for lunch and then close for dinner, just to kind of capture those fans. As far as staffing a buyout, every buyout is different. It kind of depends on the group. My last buyout we had a few weeks ago had 8 different departments that we had to section into areas. So I staffed it as basically 8 separate events so that they had their own people to handle their area. Otherwise, when staffing, I look at the total number, make sure that all the bars that we're utilizing are fully staffed. I set up barbacks as well as bussers and then people who are handling the food. And I just break it down that way with staffing. As far as utilizing our space for buyouts, our location can hold up to 1,300 people. So when utilizing that, not every group is 1,300 that's coming in. So if they are a smaller group, pushing them into different areas and closing off some of our areas just so that it doesn't feel too big, that the group doesn't feel lost in our space. As well as, making it more of a fun environment by keeping them more together.
Sure. Besides the buyouts, I'm going to rewind a little bit and kind of force you guys to talk a little bit more about the festivals and those non-private events that you're utilizing. I mean, you're not utilizing your 13,000 space for 13,000 people just for your festivals. You're utilizing that extra space. What do you guys get out of those types of events? Are you making money off of those? You don't have to give exact numbers, but or is it more of a marketing play in utilizing it? Can you talk about why you do those types of events in addition? Because obviously we're here talking about ways in which you can generate revenue, right, with your spaces. And you're not only doing these private revenue generating events, you're utilizing the space for these festivals and what have you as well. So can you talk to me a little bit about why you put on those types of events as well, and then how you execute those in conjunction with the still running your tap rooms the way that you would normally do that?
Yeah, I think splitting into kind of 2, like the anniversary style festival events, or we used to do a DRK event. It was a dark beer, a ticketed event, Sour Fest, different things like that. We had Comic-Con where we featured Boot Stout and things like that here, and then our anniversary event. Candidly, we do not make money on our anniversary events, so it is purely a celebration of Stone. And we've been doing it every year for so long that I think if we stopped doing it, people would not be happy. So that's purely a marketing event for us. It's a fun way to get everybody together. We have, volunteers from the rest of our company come in and work the events with us. It's just a really fun day for the team as well. They don't have to, not in service, but they're just, pouring beer in the parking lot, listening to great music, having all these cool, fun, different event spaces that we have. So that one definitely, that's more marketing, hey, come enjoy and celebrate with us. And then we have the ticketed events, which the goal is to make money on those. It can depend sometimes on things, but generally we're making money on ticketed events, and those, it's a combination. It's driving people in. Generally those people know who we are, but hopefully they'll bring a friend that's never been to Stone before and see the space and be like, wow, this is a really cool space. Maybe they'll check out the event spaces. It's the same when people come in for private events. If they've never been to the space before and they see it. So, and then I would say with the non-events, that's just really us saying, that's fine. You don't want to book an event space to pay, for that area. But hey, we've got our bocce courtyard that's available. Yes, we can take your 50 top in tomorrow. We're actually going to not staff it, but we explain to them, hey, we've got GoTab. You can order everything via the QR. And as long as we are upfront with them on kind of these larger events, most people are totally fine with that. They're like, hey, totally get it. We get this space for free, basically. But yeah, you're going to order it through GoTab. We have a recurring group that now comes in once a month that kind of 200 people. They're considered a non-event, but we give them a kind of a separate space to hang out. They order through the QR. We bring up the food and the drinks for them, and it really works for us. So again, I think it's being able to rely, say, we've got the space. What can we do with it? We're always going to say yes. Let's maximize the revenue as much as we can.
Yeah, I just to piggyback off of some of that. I think that, like as you mentioned, getting people in your space, and sometimes, like you said, I think you guys are calling them non-events, which, I think like smaller breweries in the industry and sort of like an industry standard, especially with smaller breweries that don't have maybe as much space, having people come in and maybe like not even charging for the space, right? Maybe you have like a beverage minimum, or maybe you're just like trying to get people in your doors and utilizing your space, because let's say you book for like a small shower on a Sunday. Maybe not everyone's going to drink, but you're probably driving people in the door who are going to go and order a beer that maybe wouldn't have been there on that, Sunday afternoon. So yeah, no, I think that for smaller breweries, especially too, it's like, some of those are the best events that you can have. And then as far as like ticketed events and those types of things, it also brings in people who normally wouldn't come through your doors, right? So like if you're getting creative and saying yes to having, like a dog show at your brewery or something like that, you're going to, have marketing. Everyone loves or most people love dogs. And so, you're bringing in people, dog lovers, and then they're going to have a beer, and then they might come back because they love your space. So.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you guys are talking about being flexible, being able to say yes, and then kind of pivoting on a dime based on what you have available to you, whether it's, the platforms that your tech stack that you're using, or the staffing, abilities that you have as well. And then obviously the spaces that you have available. Casey, you talked a little bit about being creative with your smaller spaces. This is in different places that I've worked. This is where we struggled at first, and we kind of adapted, was being able to give away those spaces, not only for free, but being able to be flexible, but then also setting the standard for future events. And just the concern of, hey, if I give this space away for free to this group now, they're going to expect it for free the next time they book. And so I think just what we kind of learned was, to Allison, to jump on what you said earlier about that direct communication with your guests, about setting those expectations in the moment, about, hey, this is what we're able to do for you. This is what we're able to provide, and this is how we're going to be able to provide the service in this moment. And then that sets the standard for the future. We might have to have a different conversation. So, I mean, just obviously know your clientele, know the people that are coming in, and direct communication is always a virtue in general. Never mind with your clientele that are coming in, and the guests that are coming in to your spaces. So I wanted to definitely tack on that learning opportunity I had years ago as well.
Yeah, no, I think that also like visually representing that discount maybe that you're offering them, and sort of highlighting it, not showing it, but maybe if you're sending them an invoice or something, it's in there that you're giving them that opportunity and that off, is a great way to sort of showcase that you're doing something and sort of elevating their experience. And then, you know, again, it's sort of like a requirement that you're discounting is a way to sort of not.
Well, of course, now we're talking about discounts. We're talking about financing. So that really goes into it kind of segues into the other kind of side of the coin here. You know, you are looking to make money, generate revenue on these, especially on these private events. We'll put those, you know, non-events to the side for the moment. But you know, Allison, Gregg, can you talk to me about how you guys are costing out these type of events? Me personally, like, we loved doing events because even if we were running 30% food costs in the regular food and beverage, more than likely my banquet menu was running closer to 20% food cost. And the staffing levels, usually, if you executed it properly, it takes a lot less staff. And of course, in being in California for most of my experience was, and as obviously you guys are based in, you know, labor wages are a little bit different than other parts of the country as well. So there's obviously those two aspects that you're having to take account for. So are you guys hitting this kind of the same experience as I kind of outlined, where these private events and these banquets can really be not only revenue generating in spaces that are maybe not being used for regular service, but also in addition to just being better margins in general compared to regular service?
I mean, I can speak to some of it, and Sydney can as well. The only thing I would add in is different operations, and I'm sure different people from have different size operations that are listening to this. You know, I think you're touching on where you would have, for most operators, a theoretical food cost, and you know, the labor cost is a little easier to have visibility into. But unless you're really keeping separate inventory specifically for events, it would be hard to, and I don't know, for most operations, it's probably not worth it in some sense to have completely different invoicing and, like I say, inventory specific to events, so you can really get a true look. When you have multiple operations going, meaning events as well as a bistro, it's going to blend in, meaning your labor utilized for running your regular operation. If you have events going at the same time, they may also be doing, you know, regular service. So I think it's critical to know what your theoretical food cost on these events is as you sell them off. And then obviously, to Sydney's point earlier, there's an opportunity cost on any given day that you have to account for when you're pricing. I know it's, you know, the buzzword of dynamic pricing and what's going on sometimes in the industry. Well, event space has always had that, right? So you're always looking at opportunity cost, and then by that meaning what those sales would have been in a given day. And then you want to make sure, you know, from prior year that you're doing more than that when you cost it out. You know, and Sydney does a great job in terms of labor, knowing we have, you know, the nice part with events is obviously you have fixed revenue. You know what you're going to bring in, and you can work against that. Whereas running a normal business, you're always forecasting what you might do, but it's a guess ultimately. And then you have to make cuts on labor. With events having that fixed nature of it, with sometimes some incremental sales that you can add on through an open bar, it's a lot easier to hit the targets, which, to your point, Adam, that makes typically the margin greater when the equation's much simpler to solve than a typical restaurant.
We love a day that has a bunch of events. This last weekend we had, you know, 7 events, I think, on Friday. And so, yeah, it drives your sales up and all your costs go down. So we absolutely love those days when we do have private events, because the margins are that much better on those events based off of, you know, packaging, pricing that Sydney is set with, you know, going through with our chefs, making sure everything looks appropriate, or costing effectively with the different packages and everything.
Yeah. So kind of touching on that and non-events. With the non-events, we always first and foremost try to sell the event space. It's never oh, let me give you free space. That is not our first sales pitch. Our first sales pitch is always trying to sell them on a private event. And then if that doesn't seem to be what they're looking for, then offering that non-event. Our non-events typically generate anywhere from $3,000 to, I think we've had $4,000 for non-events. That kind of is definitely on the smaller scale. Our private events range anywhere from $1,300 for a food and beverage minimum to having a $6,500 food and beverage minimum for, you know, our designated spaces, not including buyouts. With that being said, we definitely look at it big picture, you know, from the month, the quarter, the year versus looking at it day to day, because like, as they mentioned, our revenue centers aren't split with events and bistro. So we could have a really good day of events and then the next day there's not events, but it all ends up evening out by the end of the month, end of the quarter, end of the year. So we're always looking ahead for that. But with pricing out our event spaces, our motto has always been to be reasonably priced. So we've done cost analyses of the different event spaces in the area, not just other breweries, other restaurants that are next door to us, hotels, whatnot. I know we are very different, but we are a unique space in that we are as large as a hotel, but bigger than some restaurants. So kind of having to look at that. However, with our tap rooms, they look at more of doing just a beverage minimum and doing a per person cost for drinks to make sure that they're offsetting their costs. But anyways, back to our location. With our private event spaces, I ultimately look at how many the space can hold, what our food costs are, can a group of that size reach that minimum. If it's not obtainable, then maybe I'm pricing it a little bit too high, because you never want to price over what can be reached. And then, you know, it has taken, this location has been open for 11 years now. And over these 11 years, I've been with the property on and off for 8 years, and I've seen our prices of our spaces kind of fluctuate, but pretty much stay the same. At the end of the year, we take a look at which spaces sold the most and which we sold the least, and kind of assess from there. Do we need to adjust that cost down a little bit? Do we need to adjust it up? And always don't be scared to do a discount on the minimum if you're noticing a lot of times that people are, you know, balking at that price.
Casey, across the industry, ones that you guys work with, obviously with Tripleseat, and obviously from your experience as well, have you seen different ways in which deposits, minimums, et cetera, are, calculated or executed? As well as I want to rewind a little bit and touch a little bit more on something, when we talked at the very beginning with Sydney about marketing your spaces, being involved in different areas and what have you. So anything, any other insight that you have in those realms would be really useful.
Yeah, I think that industry standard wise, I mean, like hitting the nail on the head with keeping the cost of space sort of low, right? You're trying to get people in and have them drink. So getting them in your space, making sure that they're serious about the space. So having a, space cost, but and having that sort of, again, cover some of the making it predictable, right? So covering some of the labor costs and that type of thing, but keeping that more minimal, because if you're going to an actual like venue specific space, they obviously are elevating their space costs. But for breweries, your clientele is more someone who's looking to have a fun, flexible time. That's maybe not as, just more like comfortable, low key, right? So, and then obviously like you generate a lot of revenue having people come in and drink. So having a food and beverage minimum, or if you're at a brewery without food, having a beverage minimum, so that the customer, there's an expectation of how much they, need to come in and drink, because that's, really the name of the game when you're having people come in to a brewery event space. So I think industry standard is sort of that setup. I know that, definitely taking at least, right around a 50% deposit up front to make sure that the customer is serious. I find that more successful customers are taking deposits rather than just keeping a credit card on file. Because again, you're getting customers who are less likely to back out, having boundaries in that, that in that way, right? So just making sure that the customer is serious about taking the space. That way, as you're getting busier and busier, especially during busier months, you're not missing out. Someone cancels last minute, and then you're kind of out of that revenue that you could have sold that space to somebody else. So of course, taking that deposit is really important, and that, across the board is what we're seeing with our most successful customers, especially in the brewery space. So yeah. And I think that, I think most of the time, our customers are sort of kind of getting away from, room rentals and really honing in on those beverage minimums. So that's what we're seeing these days, and it's seeming to be really successful. As far as marketing and sort of hitting the streets and getting your name out there, I know that just in my previous world, that was all what we were about, was getting involved in things outside of our walls, right? So getting involved in community events, the chamber, like actually being a representative in the city is super important, because then you're the call when someone wants to have someone has an event coming up. They know you're going to say yes. That you're going to make it happen, and you're making those relationships. Or you're a face out there for this space. I bet they can make it work for you, that type of thing. And I think that we used to generate a lot of revenue from just repeat customers, or customers that that you had an association with in some way. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, from my previous life as well, just partnering with the, in the places in which I had multiple locations, you partner obviously with your local neighbors and what have you to create different events, maybe in the shared space. Allison, you guys talked about that, obviously that shared space, that big green space, where you're able to do that, whether it's, partnering in that fashion, but also partnering with them regarding clientele and getting the word out there for different aspects of your business as well. Of course, being in the brewery space, there's always opportunity to promote what you have going on at third-party festivals and third-party, events where you're pouring at those events, or you're donating product and what have you. So there's always a way to do like trade in that way. And I'm not saying trading actual commodities, but actually just marketing materials and word of mouth. I found a lot of success in that venture as well, when it comes to kind of creating new opportunities at your space for booking either events or just generating revenue in general.
I was going to say, to add on top of that, we encourage all of our location managers to join the Chamber of Commerce, pour at local events, go out to the concierge at hotels around you, bring them in for a free meal. Let them see the spaces that you do have. So when they're talking about it, it's like, hey, back there, yeah, Stone Brewing's a great place for you to just go out to dinner, right? Not even necessarily pitching them for events, but you hope that it gets there, right? So we encourage all of our teams. Our one location went and it was to the apartment buildings around them and said, hey, or Airbnb people that they know are Airbnb people, hey, come in, get your growler filled up for free, so that on your next person that's running your Airbnb, they have beer ready to go for them from Stone Brewing. It's things like that that we really try to get outside of the four walls, get in there, go market yourselves, let people know that we're here in the different spots that we are. But we're all for it. Let's throw anything we can to get ourselves out there and be creative about it. And our guys have come up with really awesome things. So it's good to see.
The growler thing is it's something we did at another place as they were building apartments outside of the beer garden I was working at. We donated basically growlers to every new apartment. If you started renting an apartment, you got a growler, and so that you had this connection already to the space. Even though you could look out your window and see the beer garden based on where it was built, but just getting out there, everybody listening, you have a staff. You already have people on board with what you're doing. Utilize them as well. One place I worked at, we had referral bonuses that we would give to our staff. So if they go out and they could book a party, obviously our banquet coordinator would put it all together and price it all out and what have you. But we would present them with a referral bonus if they actually executed the event. So you have a lot of tools already at your at hand that you can utilize for that matter as well. Casey, I liked the fact that you were really talking about steering away from room charges. You're seeing that, I'm assuming, from on a regular basis and going more toward a deposit. Can you talk to me about the importance, I guess, of managing that process a little bit more cleanly, because you are gonna, instead of keeping a card on file, you've got people that can walk away from a certain situation and then just argue a charge that maybe they didn't sign for or they didn't apply in appropriate manner, and how you kind of see the differences in with your clientele.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's harder to say, hey, you're canceling your event, I'm going to charge your card, rather than I already charged it, you're not getting a refund, right? So I think that taking a deposit up front is going to, put yourself in a better position to secure and make sure that customer sticks to the agreement. So I will say that we definitely see that. That's really common, and becoming more and more common, is taking that deposit up front. Obviously, so Tripleseat just came out with our own payment processor, which just makes it easier for our customers to take those payments up front. And it has, when I used to work with Tripleseat, before I actually started working for Tripleseat, it actually changed our business in a lot of ways, to just start taking those deposits up front. Just made sure that we were working with people who are serious about booking their spaces, and just add some security to make sure that they weren't going to back out on us. So, but yeah, no, it is something that highly recommend, and is going to just put yourself in a better position. Than, obviously taking up the credit card up front is better than not doing anything at all and just hoping that they show up. But I would say that taking a percentage, even if you're not charging for the space, but you have a beverage minimum set up, maybe they pay 50% of that beverage minimum that you're expecting. So
that's great. And then, of course, there's a whole another accounting piece to all of this, where you're actually tracking your deposits as such, as deposits, not as sales. You want to make sure that you're doing whatever kind of transfer you have to do on the back end when you are applying those deposits, or if you have a system that allows you to do that automatically, then of course you want to utilize that as much as possible. How much of this communication do you think is done nowadays? Of course, maybe with direct access to Tripleseat, you can speak to that specifically, but how much of this is done digitally versus face-to-face, or whether it's, in person, or communicating via, digital tabs, or being able to take those deposits remotely and what have you?
Yeah. So, I mean, something that I always like to stress to my customers, because a lot of time, I work with new customers that are just taking on Tripleseat. So this is a whole new world for them. Especially, if you're working with a smaller brewery who, this is their first software that they're taking on, right? So I like to express the importance of making things easier for your customer. like that's the world we live in now. It's how can they enter their credit card, they can sign their contract and enter their credit card information and be done with it. You are going to, one, save tons of manpower that you were going to have to use when trying to just call someone up and beg them for their credit card information, right? And also it just gives the customer a better experience if they have a really easy, efficient time going ahead and filling out that information rather than having to hunt it down or make copies of a check, that type of thing. So I think it's just expected now from clientele, and I think that the easier you can make it for them, the easier it's going to be, to collect that payment and not have to spend more time hunting down payments. So
yeah, you don't want to be hunting down payments for sure.
Yeah, and everyone's busy, and so if it's easier for the customer, it's going to be easier for you.
So you Sydney, we talked about this a couple days ago, the fact that you guys you've utilized different platforms, different services and what have you, whether it's Tripleseat or what have you, but and you've been doing this for a while. What I really want to kind of pick your brain about is, what changes have you made? When have you decided you had to make changes, whether it's through your own execution or through your own out of necessity or just out of trends that you're seeing out of your clientele, whether your spaces change, whether your clientele changes, or the abilities that you have with your tech stack changes? What kind of things have you found that you've changed over the years in your execution and just in general with all of your events?
Our change has been very minimal. We did change from utilizing, I think when we first opened, we were using Excel documents to make our event orders and contracts and whatnot, to getting Gather, which is now Tripleseat, right? And then we turned over to Tripleseat about 7 years ago. So Tripleseat has been a lifesaver for us when we're doing 1,000 events here, or if a smaller restaurant is just doing a few events and it's not an event person managing it, it's a restaurant manager that's handling the events. Having Tripleseat to organize your communication, because you can do all email discussion through it, collecting contracts, deposits, and then putting all the notes that you need to know about that event, as well as having it block off the different spaces so that what space do I have still left in my property to utilize. It just keeps you organized and whatnot. As far as changes that have come up over the years, our pricing has changed just with the economy and the world we live in. 2 years ago and even last year, we were pretty firm on our numbers, on our minimums. We kind of stuck to them. There wasn't a whole lot of discounts, but as the years get harder, there's a little more discount and a little more wiggle room that you can do to get groups in. But as far as setup and execution, we've pretty much kind of stuck to our guns on how we've been executing. Staffing purposes, though, by bringing on GoTab, especially for our non-events, we have been able to decrease our staffing levels and help our labor costs by utilizing the QR codes that they offer. We don't need to have a server for every single table or for every single group. All we need is a bartender and then a food runner. And then everyone else, they do all the ordering, they pay for everything on their phone, which, saves us a lot. There.
Well, I appreciate the shout out there. But no, it really goes to the point that having the ability to do these things, to be flexible, to be able to, whether it's take deposits or take payments in different formats, utilizing digital versions of event cards or just having the ability for guests to do their own ordering, can allow you as the operator to do more things, or at least choose to do more things. It's not like you're ever pigeonholed to do a certain way every single time. You're able to kind of adapt to the type of event that you're trying to put on or your clients are trying to put on as well. So it's a big portion of why, I want to make sure we kind of touched on what you want to. There's a difference between what you want to do and what you're actually able to do, whether it's, again, taking those deposits remotely, making sure that you're applying those funds accordingly, or being able to execute in a digital world if necessary, obviously being able to utilize your staff and give the experience that you want as well. Something that we kind of touched on a little bit throughout this whole panel is the idea that these events, of course, can generate revenue, but the lingering effects of putting on a really good event, whether it's private, whether it's a non-event, what have you, in generating more revenue in the future, bringing people back in. I will always used to tell my staff, and my banker coordinator would always push this as well, is that if you had a group of 50 people that came in for a wedding reception or a birthday party or what have you, maybe 5 of them came there because it was your event. The other 45 very well could have been coming in only because they were dragged there because of the event itself, because they said, this is where we're going to have the event, you have to come. So you have 45 individuals that you have the ability to transfer into future guests, whether they book a new party or whether they come in as a guest at your restaurant and spend money just for dinner or lunch or what have you. And so the generating that kind of revenue, I think, is a whole nother side of this. Allison, Sydney, Gregg, do you guys have a general sense of how many times you get, whether it's a new party coming in to book an event and then rebooking for a future event, or even if it's just, estimates on like how you're generating more revenue from people coming in on their own after attending an event?
Yeah, I would say, roughly about 10% of like our non-event groups end up becoming an actual event. They then saw the property, they saw the space, and they're like, I loved the space, but I would like more full service. Well, that's going to be a private event. So then we can kind of course them into doing the private event route. And then about, roughly 15 to 20% of our business is also just people who came in for an event, saw the event, loved how it went, loved the execution, and wanted to book with us again. And then we have roughly about 15% of just repeat clients that come every year. We have the lovely monthly groups. We work with a lot of associations that come and have their monthly lunches or their
military down here.
Happy hours. Yes, lots of
hail
military.
and bales. Lots of hail and bales.
Lots
every
of military. We are at Liberty Station, the old Navy base. So we get a lot of military events that come through. So just, being knowledgeable of the area and whatnot. And then just to touch a quick thing on marketing, that we work with our destination management companies within San Diego, as well as our San Diego Tourism Authority, being a part of those associations and a part of being known to those groups always help bring in business, because those are the people who are looking for space and they're looking for something unique. And so as a brewery, that's a fun activity for a big corporate group to utilize, going and doing a tasting. They love having an experience or something that they can be doing or learning or educational. So, learning about the beer process, being breweries, we have that knowledge of how it's made, what's needed and whatnot. And people are always looking for that.
I'd say the big word of the game is put on a great show every time. If you wow everybody every time with your events, non-events, ticketed events, any of that stuff, you're going to generate people. You're going to have people coming back in, whether it's for a couple beers at happy hour. They're going to say, hey, let's go here after work, whether it's for dinner, whether it's for booking their own private event, whether it's coming to one of our ticketed events. As long as we're putting on a great show, which is what we try to drive all of our team members to, hey, you're putting on a show for everybody. It doesn't matter if they're, what event they're in for. If they're not here for an event, they're just here for dining. Put on a great show. they're going to want to come back and spend more money with us. So.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I'll add at the very end here is just know how to activate your space as well. So if you have space that's not being utilized, you're not booking, do your own. Those are where these non-events I think do come into play, whether it's doing beer dinners or doing tastings or doing some kind of an event that gets people in there to really expose it on a regular basis so that it can generate at least the word of mouth in that fashion. All right. I mean, I will. I'll let you guys, put in any other last 2 cents. Casey, is there anything else that I can think is worth kind of like closing up with regarding this topic that you think everybody should be aware of?
Yeah, I think that this has been awesome. And I think that just like the name of the game, as we've said a bunch, is getting creative, saying yes. And then also even when we've got all these ideas and you want to say yes to everything, it's also the execution and how you streamline all of this and how you execute it in a way that's reasonable and efficient for you. And so just having that expectation too, and making sure you have a good system in place to say yes to everything. So,
absolutely. Gregg, Allison, Sydney, thank you so much. Is there any other closing topics that you want to, just impart onto everybody before we get out of here? Close it up.
I'll let Gregg take it away. Closing remarks.
I like it.
I think the important thing, look, I mean, for the people listening, that technology is here to stay, right? And utilizing technology to make your life easier so you can focus on those things that count, which is wowing the customer, putting a show. I think that's the most important. There's tons of technology out there that you could do. I love the flexibility that GoTab allows you to change your operating kind of structure and how you handle the areas is great. And I think, look, we're afforded a luxury here at Stone of having massive facilities. Most people are not. So I think, this looking at the opportunities within your space and what you're able to handle, looking at doing events as programming effectively, what Adam was speaking to bringing new eyes to see that space. We put so much attention into programming being bands or food trucks, but events have the same impact of putting new eyes on your space. And so I think, using the technology that's available out there to best generate the revenue and continue to drive growth in your business is the most important thing.
Wonderful. All right. Well, I think that that really puts a nice summation on everything that we've been talking about. And Andrew, thank you so much for having us. And we'll hopefully anybody listening got a lot out of it. They can start executing more events. They can start executing events with a little bit more confidence regarding procedures, regarding marketing, regarding execution. But I think that's going to wrap it up for us today. And thank everybody so much for joining us, and enjoy the rest of enjoy the rest of Panel Fest.
Hi, everybody.